With the start of the new year comes the Lunar New Year, a holiday for families to gather, cook delicious food, and enjoy each other's company. However, 32-year-old Gia is not happy. She is an out-of-work freelancer, though most would simply call her unemployed. As she prepares food for the guests who have yet to arrive, her mother sits nearby, watching a cute video of her grandson. Gia grows irritated as her parents get in her way, picking at the food she has cooked before the guests even arrive. Frustrated, she suggests that, since they are eating, they should be the ones cooking. Her mother, unimpressed, reminds her that cooking is the least she can do, considering she still lives at home and does not pay rent. A short while later, Gia's younger sister, Jimin, arrives with her family. Their mother rushes to embrace her granddaughter, while Jimin's husband carries their son. Jimin, exhausted from the trip, immediately takes a seat, relieved to rest. Gia emerges from the shadows to greet her sister with an almost forced smile. She hands Jimin a floral print apron, her expression unreadable. Jimin notes that the apron suits Gia and jokingly remarks that all she needs now is to walk down the aisle. However, Gia does not find the joke amusing. Her lifeless expression remains as she insists that Jimin put on the apron and help her cook. Their mother, watching the exchange, is not impressed and lightly smacks Gia, displeased by her attitude. Gia simply wants someone else to take over the cooking, but Jimin's husband intervenes, pointing out that Jimin is already exhausted. His words carry an unspoken implication, and within moments, the realization dawns on the family. Jimin is pregnant with their third child. The atmosphere in the house shifts instantly. Excitement fills the air as the family celebrates the unexpected news. Soon after, they all gather at the table to eat. Later that evening, Gia stands outside, smoking. The cold air stings her skin, but she barely notices. Anger simmers beneath the surface, not just at her sister, but at everything. Her life, her family's expectations, and the constant comparisons to Jimin weigh heavily on her mind. As she exhales a cloud of smoke, she thinks about how her family keeps pushing her to meet someone, as if that would miraculously solve everything. Her thoughts are suddenly interrupted by an unfamiliar voice. A man, standing nearby in the smoking area, comments on how she still has the same foul mouth. He is eating a piece of plain chicken breast, an unusual sight in the designated smoking zone, which briefly confuses Gia. The man introduces himself as Minchul Jin and reveals that he used to live next door. He recalls always wearing headphones back then, as if expecting Gia to remember him. Gia narrows her eyes, trying to place him. The name is vaguely familiar, but the details remain a blur. Gia initially does not remember Minchul, but after a moment, she realizes that he used to be a scrawny gamer kid. Minchul, however, does not think he has changed that much, though Gia insists that he looks completely different. She also finds it strange that he is eating chicken breast in a smoking area. Minchul explains that he is there because his family was unhappy with him refusing to eat the Lunar New Year food, claiming it had too many calories. As the conversation continues, Gia recalls that Minchul is the same age as her, 32 years old. They used to live in the same building and were childhood friends, though not by choice. Minchul had been the shy kid who did not get along with anyone in class, but Gia sees no point in reminiscing. Instead, she wonders how he changed so much over the years. She concludes that city life must have transformed him. Now, he is an assistant manager and a programmer at a well-known company, seemingly living a stable and successful life. The comparison to her own situation unsettles Gia. Unlike Minchul, she is still living at home, constantly scolded by her parents, and unemployed. The realization that Minchul is doing better than her shocks her, and she begins to sulk again. Before she can dwell on it further, Minchul interrupts her thoughts by asking how she has been. Gia avoids answering directly, and Minchul simply remarks that he has just been living. While he personally thinks he is doing fine, his parents do not share the same opinion. They have been pressuring him to get married, even going as far as signing him up for a dating service with a $5,000 registration fee. Minchul assumes that Gia is not dealing with the same issue, but she is. Frustrated with their similar predicament, she suddenly suggests that they should get married. Minchul is stunned by the idea, but Gia explains that since both of their parents are nagging them to settle down, getting married to each other would solve the problem. It would be a win-win situation. To Gia's surprise, Minchul takes her suggestion seriously and asks her father for his blessing. Before long, they are married. For their honeymoon, they travel to a tropical location. On the first night, while Gia is drinking, she finally processes what has happened. Reality sinks in. This is not a dream. She is in another country, married to Minchul. Later that night, as they get ready for bed, Minchul searches through his suitcase for something to make their first night together more comfortable. Gia, misunderstanding his intentions, assumes he is referring to something intimate and becomes flustered, insisting that she is not ready. To her surprise, Minchul simply hands her a pair of earplugs. He explains that he sometimes snores and then promptly goes to sleep. When he starts snoring, Gia puts in the earplugs and drifts off, noting to herself how practical and well-prepared Minchul is. The next day, Gia worries that their happy honeymoon could quickly take a turn for the worse if they start fighting. As she carefully selects her outfit for the day, Minchul appears in unfashionable but comfortable clothing, including socks with sandals. He impatiently asks how much longer she will take, clearly indifferent to his own appearance. When Gia questions his outfit, he dismisses her concerns, but she insists that appearances matter, especially since they will be out in public. Since their schedule is not particularly tight, they decide to go clothes shopping. While Gia does not consider herself an expert in fashion, she assumes that anything would be an improvement over Minchul's current outfit. However, she is quickly proven wrong when he emerges from the fitting room wearing a red and blue outfit with suspenders. His reasoning is purely practical. He believes the bright colors will make him more visible and prevent accidents. Trying to salvage the situation, Gia hands him a simple shirt and pants to try on, relieved when he looks much better in them. To her shock, Minchul then asks the store clerk for 7 identical sets of the outfit, reasoning that since it looks good, he should have multiple versions. Outraged, Gia insists on picking out a few more outfits for him to rotate between. As she browses, Minchul's attention shifts to the swimsuit section. This prompts him to suggest picking out a swimsuit for Gia to wear during their upcoming banana boat ride. Without thinking, she agrees, but she is immediately embarrassed once she realizes what she just allowed him to do. After finishing their shopping, they head toward the shore. Gia remains flustered about Minchul selecting her swimsuit. Since she had agreed, she feels obligated to wear whatever he bought, despite not knowing what kind of swimsuit it is. Assuming it must be something revealing and sexy, she braces herself for the worst. However, when she finally sees what he chose, she is surprised to find that it is a wetsuit matching his own. To Minchul, this was the best possible choice. The wetsuit is comfortable, practical, and provides insulation. However, Gia finds it embarrassing. It is their honeymoon, and while everyone else is wearing bikinis and swim shorts, she is covered from head to toe. She worries that it might be too hot, but to her surprise, the wetsuit turns out to be very comfortable. Despite her initial reluctance, she ends up having a wonderful time. They enjoy the banana boat ride, eat delicious food, and take plenty of pictures. Toward the end of the day, they walk along the beach. Gia, conscious of how expensive the trip is, wants to do as much as possible. However, Minchul notices that she looks tired and then points out an injury on her heel. She had been so caught up in the fun that she had not even realized she was hurt. Concerned, Minchul offers to give her a piggyback ride, reasoning that walking with an injured heel must be painful. Gia hesitates, thinking about their schedule, but eventually climbs onto his back. Embarrassed, she asks if she is heavy, to which Minchul responds by saying that carrying her is a good workout. Offended by his remark, she complains, but as they continue, she begins to feel a surprising sense of comfort from being carried on his broad, steady back. As the sun begins to set, Gia is struck by how beautiful the view is. She insists on taking a picture, even though Minchul is reluctant. She reminds him that they should make the most of the moment. Back at the hotel, Gia looks at the picture and recalls her sister's warning that couples often fight during their honeymoon. Yet, despite her expectations, she and Minchul have not fought at all. Instead, they had a lot of fun. Even so, she remains slightly embarrassed about being carried by him. That feeling quickly fades when she notices Minchul fast asleep. Satisfied with how the trip turned out, she finally allows herself to relax. Back in Korea, Gia's mother prepares an abundance of food and packs boxes to celebrate her return and her move into Minchiel's home. Although Gia feels apprehensive, she reminds herself that she agreed to this when she got married. After the move, Minchiel presents Gia with a document. At that moment, she recalls a random cartoon theme song with lyrics that once seemed encouraging. Just do it, just do it. It's okay to make mistakes because you aren't an adult yet. However, she now realizes that as an adult, mistakes come with serious consequences. The weight of her impulsive decisions settles in. Her life has spiraled out of control, and she is now living with Minchiel. The document turns out to be a contract for their cohabitation. Shocked, Gia throws it on the floor, but soon accepts that establishing rules is necessary. They each write down 3 conditions. Mincheol's rules include no smoking, not bothering Mouse, and openly addressing any issues. Jia's rules include knocking before entering a room, not forcing anything, and communicating if something is wrong. She is especially outraged by the no smoking rule, as not even her father could make her quit. However, Mincheol stands firm, saying that while he dislikes the smell, she can smoke in moderation. Curious, Jia asks about Mouse, only to discover that it is Mincheol's cat, currently sitting at her feet. He explains that the cat is named Mouse because cats like mice. While Jia admits that she likes cats, she wonders what would have happened if she didn't. Mincheol casually states that he would have arranged for her to stay in a separate room, as money is not an issue for him. His seriousness about their marriage surprises her, but they ultimately finalize the contract. Mincheol adds one last clause: either party can terminate the contract marriage at any time. Jia senses that this agreement will bring them both laughter and tears. On their first night living together, Jia decides to hold off on unpacking and focuses instead on ordering furniture. Mincheol is set to return to work the next day, while Jia feels anxious about living with someone other than her family. Mincheol, however, appears unconcerned and spends the evening gaming. The next morning, Jia is woken by the sound of Mincheol preparing breakfast. Impressed, she decides to eat since she is already awake. However, her enthusiasm quickly fades when she watches him blend the ingredients into a chicken breast smoothie. Disgusted by the taste, she searches for another option, only for Mincheol to hand her a protein bar. Frustrated, she complains that this is not real food and bitterly remarks that he will likely eat a delicious lunch at work. Mincheol disproves this assumption by revealing his packed lunch, which consists of more of his usual healthy meals. Jia looks in the fridge for something to eat, only to find it stocked with nothing but healthy food. In that moment, she gains a newfound appreciation for her mother's cooking. Seeing her disappointment, Mincheol suggests that she go out and get breakfast on her own. When Jia asks if that's really okay, he reassures her that all he needs is his smoothie. Jia has always been used to eating with her family, but she reminds herself that this is a contract marriage. After Mincheol leaves, she confidently declares that she has no intention of finding a job anytime soon, and will remain unemployed until her savings run out. Meanwhile, on his way to work, Mincheol gets into the car of his colleague, Sang-yu Choi. Sang-yu is surprised when Mincheol suddenly asks him to submit a request for 10 days of vacation. He also notices something unusual. Mincheol is smiling, which is a rare sight. Curious, Sang-yu asks if something good happened. Mincheol recalls Jia saying goodbye to him that morning, and casually remarks that it's nice knowing someone is waiting for you at home. Sang-yu, confused, presses for more details, and Mincheol clarifies that his wife is at home. Shocked, Sang-yu initially thinks Mincheol is joking until he confirms that he got married last week. When they arrive at work, word spreads quickly, and their colleagues congratulate Mincheol. He hands out souvenirs from his honeymoon. But before Sang-yu can return to his desk, manager Suyeon Seo pulls him aside, clearly upset. Suyeon, who appears to have harbored feelings for Mincheol, is visibly frustrated upon learning about his marriage. Sang-yu comments on how unexpected it was since Mincheol never seemed interested in women. Suyeon's background is briefly summarized. Once considered a child genius, she simply wanted to settle down with a moderately decent man. However, as she climbed the corporate ladder, she remained single, struggling to find someone who met her expectations. It suddenly dawns on her that the very decent man she had been searching for was Mincheol all along. Now, with the reality of his marriage sinking in, she realizes her hopes of marrying him are shattered. All she can do now is consult with Sang-yu, who attended university with her and has earned the nickname Company Cupid for his matchmaking tendencies. Later that evening, determined to see if Mincheol is truly married, Sang-yu and Suyeon decide to follow him home. As they arrive, they spot Mincheol speaking to a woman on the street. To their surprise, it's an angry Jia smoking a cigarette. She is visibly upset because Mincheol didn't call to inform her that he would be coming home late, leaving her waiting for dinner. Sang-yu and Suyeon, watching from a distance, struggle to believe that Jia is Mincheol's type. Meanwhile, Mincheol assumes that Jia is upset because she didn't want to eat with him after their disagreement over breakfast. However, Jia insists that the real issue is that he failed to communicate with her. Mincheol asks if he is even allowed to call Jia, reminding her that she didn't like it when he called her back in 5th grade. At the time, he had to use the house phone, and when he called to ask her to play, she turned him down. However, before Jia can respond, Mincheol notices 2 people peeking at them from around the corner. Sang-yu and Suyeon quickly hide, but Mincheol confirms with Jia that he is, in fact, allowed to call her now. That evening, reflecting on their past, she recalls how she and Mincheol had been close when they were younger, but she started avoiding him around 5th grade after being teased for spending too much time with a boy. She continued ignoring him throughout middle school, And now, looking back, she feels guilty for how she treated him. Before she can apologize, Mincheol unexpectedly sends her a meal, her favorite, spicy chicken feet. Moved by the gesture, Gia immediately storms into Mincheol's room. He points out that she just broke one of their house rules, but she insists that since there's a problem, they need to talk it out. Sitting down together, Gia starts by complaining that he didn't get her any beer to go with the chicken feet. Eventually, she gets to the main point. She realizes they've never had a proper conversation before, and thinks it would be a good idea to talk while they eat. She offers Mincheol a beer, but he immediately refuses, explaining that he doesn't want to compromise his fitness goals. Instead, he opts for water and asks what she wanted to talk about. Gia didn't actually plan anything specific and decides to improvise. 2 hours later, she is completely drunk, rambling about their childhood and reminiscing about the games they used to play together. Eventually, she passes out at the table. Mincheol abruptly wakes her with an alarm and tells her to go to her room to sleep, reassuring her that he'll clean up. Gia, still intoxicated, realizes she drank all the alcohol she originally bought for 2 people. In her drunken state, she suddenly asks to see Mincheol's ear. As he leans in, she unexpectedly snatches his glasses and comments on how poor his eyesight is. Annoyed, Mincheol moves to retrieve them, pushing her against the wall in the process. At first, Gia finds it amusing, but the mood shifts when she notices how attractive Mincheol looks without his glasses. Realizing how close they are, she becomes flustered, quickly returns his glasses, and flees to her room in embarrassment. The next morning, Gia stares at Mincheol as he gets ready for work. She wants to apologize for her behavior the previous night so things can return to normal. However, when she finally gathers the courage to speak, she panics and blurts out, "I'm Yell," in response to the cat meowing. Mincheol is left completely confused. At work, he asks Sangyu about Gia's strange behavior, wondering why she randomly meowed at him. Sangyu assumes Mincheol is bragging, but Mincheol is genuinely puzzled. Sangyu suggests that maybe Gia was trying to be cute, but Mincheol dismisses the idea, insisting that they aren't close enough for her to joke around like that. Sangyu, who supposedly has a doctorate in love psychology, claims to have a simple solution to Mincheol's dilemma. Sangyu advises Mincheol that he needs to show sympathy, so when he gets home, he unexpectedly meows at Gia. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Gia collapses to the floor. Mincheol, confused by her reaction, explains that Sangyu told him this would help. However, Gia is furious that he shared their private conversation with others. To prevent similar situations in the future, they decide to add a clause in their contract stating that anything that happens between them must remain a secret. A few days later, Suyeon suggests that Mincheol host a housewarming party. When he brings it up to Gia, she is initially hesitant but eventually agrees. Mincheol, surprised by her sudden change of heart, asks why she's willing to go along with it. Gia explains that housewarming parties are typically held after getting a new home or getting married, as a way to ask for people's continued support. While not mandatory, they are rare occasions that usually only happen once or twice in a lifetime. Although hosting one is a hassle, Gia is eager to go through with it, mainly because she knows Mincheol hates the idea. This is her revenge for the embarrassment he caused her the previous day. The next morning, after arguing with Gia about how unnecessary the party is, Mincheol leaves for work with a smile. Gia starts to notice a few key traits about him. First, he is all about efficiency, almost like an eco-friendly robot. Second, he is weak to persistent requests and will eventually give in if pushed enough. Based on these traits, she assumes he's going to tell his office that his wife didn't want a housewarming party. She also becomes embarrassed when she realizes how he must refer to her at work. As Gia begins preparing for the party, she quickly starts regretting her decision. She doesn't know how to cook well, so she calls her mother for help. Soon, the guests arrive and Gia whispers to Mincheol that he should at least try to be nice to her. Everyone is impressed by the variety of dishes she prepared, but Mincheol clearly doesn't want to be there. To endure the evening, he even starts drinking. Meanwhile, Sangyu asks Suyeon if she's finally satisfied now that she has confirmed Mincheol is actually married. However, Suyeon is not ready to give up so easily. She has prepared something to test them. Sangyu announces that they will take this opportunity to learn more about Mincheol. Everyone wrote down something they wanted to ask him, and the first request is from Suyeon. She asks them to kiss. Gia is eager to hear what the first request is, but Sangyu, sensing the tension, quickly skips to the next question instead. Gia, realizing where this is going, decides that to avoid a bigger headache, they should simply act like a happy couple for the night. The next question asks when, where, and how Mincheol proposed. If they fail to answer, they have to drink an entire glass of beer. Gia struggles to come up with a believable response, but Mincheol casually states that Gia proposed to him in a smoking area while he was eating chicken breast. Since this is actually true, Gia chooses to stay silent and simply drinks. The next question is even trickier. When and where was their first kiss? The problem is they haven't kissed at all, not even during their wedding. Gia decides to drink, but to her surprise, Minchil claims they had already kissed, at 5 years old in kindergarten.